3rd, 2007 looks good. The only problem then, you may not be able to see this, but you'll see it in the PowerPoint when you get the hard copy, is this is the 2209 version of the form. So this person backdated the form. So just lots of little, you just want to make sure everything is always completed properly when you're going through these. And getting on to one of my last points, so another question that comes up quite often that I get from clients is, do I need a social security number to hire someone? No, absolutely not. Contrary to popular belief, neither immigration or tax laws require a social security number to start work. The IRS does require that you make an application for a social security number within 7 days of starting work. Usually the main obstacle, it's really a payroll issue. Most payroll companies, the bigger payroll companies, usually don't want to, or they usually can't do payroll without the number. But often what you'll have to do is you use a W number, and at some point you're going to need to file a corrected wage report. So I think it's a W-2C with the Social Security Administration. So be careful. You cannot terminate someone just because they don't have a Social Security number. Now, can you ever ask to see a Social Security number or the card during the I-9 process? If someone presented a Social Security card as one of the appropriate documents from the list, that's fine, but you can never ask to see a Social Security card or a number. The only time you can do it, or the only legitimate way to ask for it, is if it's for payroll purposes and payroll purposes only. Now, these are some of the issues that come up frequently, and it just goes to show that, again, the I-9 process is deceptively simple, but it's fraught with potential dangers. So where are we headed and what's in the future? The old legacy INS is long gone. ICE is no longer interested in negotiating fines and accepting pennies on the dollar. They're more interested in criminal prosecutions and making headlines, and they're stepping up their enforcement actions. And so what else is different? I mean, the stakes are much higher than they used to be, and the personal exposure of company personnel, I'm talking about all of you, HR directors and managers, it's personal exposure, it's all on you. So simply put, times call for the highest standard of conduct, and that means that it's imperative for you to have some sort of corporate compliance policy and some best practices to show that you're making good faith efforts to comply, and that would minimize liability if necessary. And I'm going to turn it back to Bernie so that he can talk to you about some corporate compliance best tips.
Wow, TL, my head's exploding. You scared the whatever out of me. I just didn't know all of that good stuff. On a serious note, take this stuff one bite at a time. The M274 handbook is pretty good. We're getting some fabulous questions in, by the way. Some of them, of course, we've already answered, and we will answer as we go through. But the honest truth is there's just so many different questions, and I just got the return from an ICE audit yesterday, and they included a checklist of potential errors, which is 2 or 3 pages long. Jill, I think we should copy that checklist because it's just shocking how detail-orientated the U.S. government is. One thing that I kind of just want to stress before I get into the immigration compliance policy, and all of you HR folks are very familiar with this. I was going to make my favorite joke about TL's pseudo-Australian accent, but then again, I have my little fake South African accent. But one of the important things is don't try and judge people based on their accents. Don't try and judge people, well, never mind, don't try. Just don't do it. Because, we're both U.S. citizens, and that would present a discrimination charge. Oh, well, where's your green card, TL? TL doesn't have a green card. She's got an American passport, and that's an automatic discrimination charge. We just call 1-800 U.S. Department of Justice, and they will pursue the case on our behalf. So on the one hand, you've got the Department of Homeland Security ensuring that we do not hire people who are not authorized to be employed, or even worse, that we do not hire people who are were authorized to be employed, but whose work authorization has expired. The expired work authorization is a very, very difficult situation because obviously you knew the individual was work authorized at one point, and that now has, in fact, expired. So one of the things that we're going to talk about is strategies for compliance and minimizing, and I'm going to go one step further, removing liability. It is extremely important to have a written corporate immigration compliance policy. When it comes to the penalty stage, it's extremely important that you can show that you have a corporate compliance policy that, number one, includes non-discriminatory practices. Remember that the Immigration Reform and Control Act is a double-edged sword. Number one, it prohibits hiring of people not authorized to be employed. Number two, it punishes employers who discriminate, and it prohibits. So the idea is to prohibit the hire of undocumented workers and to have a zero tolerance policy. It also, the immigration compliance policy must have a clear designation on how you deal with independent contractors. Generally speaking, we do not recommend that independent contractors be I-9. There's no requirement to do so, but the question, of course, is what is an independent contractor? And I see one of the questions is, do we I-9 someone with a 1099? We will address that in some detail. So let's focus on the best practices for I-9 compliance. The most important point, and we particularly emphasize this in larger companies, is to centralize the authority. If you have branch offices out in the field, I had represented a company with 100 or more branch offices with 100 or more different people doing I-9s, and it was complete chaos. It is absolutely critical to have a centralized authority, and I like to use the word an I-9 czar or person. That's my strange pronunciation of the Russian word. Somebody who has single authority and who is focused on training and who is focused on keeping up to date and who is focused on reading all the new versions of the M274 whenever it comes out, even though, and I caution, even that document has mistakes in it. A tickler system, a calendar system. It is absolutely important that your compliance policy include a tickler system to ensure timely re-verification of expirations. This is important. Many non-citizens will have temporary work authorizations that need to be updated and renewed. We inevitably find that that is not done, and you do have to have a calendar system. And of course, as TL mentioned, you need to have a purging system. It is ridiculous to have liability on old I-9s when you are not required to do it, and this is one of the reasons why I have some problem with the electronic storage systems, is whether or not they are adequately purging, or you're going to be handing in all the old I-9s. And the other problem with electronic purging, electronic storage, of course, is how do you update or correct these I-9s within your current system. Centralized storage, again, we do think that it is a good idea to have the I-9s in one location. There is, of course, a disadvantage of that, is that if you were to receive, if you're a very large company with numerous subsidiaries or affiliate entities, if you have centralized storage, you could, in fact, infect the other entities. So if one branch office or one entity is audited, the question is, does that include the entire group or chain? Conduct regular internal audits. I think we've only mentioned that about 25 times, so let me add one more, 26. Conduct regular internal audits. You need to be looking at your I-9s periodically, I would say at least twice a year, but depending on the nature of your workforce, if you are dependent on non-U.S. citizen workers, high-tech companies, etc., the healthcare companies, construction companies that may in fact have a larger number of non-U.S. citizen individuals. Those tend to be the more complicated cases, so conduct regular training for anyone involved in the I-9 compliance. Giving another a little plug, we do have another 3 or 4 dates coming up for our seminar, so do feel comfortable to register. If you didn't get it all the first time, you probably won't get it all the second time either. It does require 2 or 3 listenings to